I studied my master's in psychology. Humans are the weakest link. Either a sense of fear or a reward or a reinforcement.
The time frame to make a decision here is very small. He started to get manipulated to the point where he committed a suicide. AI hired a human to solve that problem. And when human asked, "Are you a robot?" and then AI lied, saying that I am human, just to get away from this. The regulation is becoming more and more common in European Union. But it also comes down at the cost of lagging behind. It is hard to expect ethics from a private company. Hello everyone, today is our fourth cybersecurity podcast, and today we'll be covering psychology from CYBR Perspective, and our guest today is Sevgi. Sevgi, I would like to start with introducing yourself to our guests.
Sure.
About your background, education.
Hi Parvis, I'm Sevgi. My background is mainly in psychology. I studied my master's in psychology years ago in London, and then I worked in the psychology field for a while, and my training was also in this field. And at some point I got into cybersecurity. I started working at a cybersecurity startup that was specializing in web application security. It was a product company, on-premise product company that had products like web application firewall and load balancer and identity access management. And that's how I got into cybersecurity, really, and then realized there is this new field at the intersection of psychology and cybersecurity. And not to forget, I'm pursuing my second master's in cyber psychology at the moment.
Sounds interesting. Actually, I have seen very limited number of people in my career who have done mixture of both psychology and cybersecurity. So it is quite interesting perspective we'll be covering today. So can you also talk us about how did you decide to combine your psychology education with cybersecurity, and what kind of unique perspectives it has enabled you to gain?
Okay, there are many overlaps between cybersecurity and psychology. In cybersecurity, you look at cognitive biases and decision-making processes, which is directly linked how we react to phishing and other similar cybersecurity attacks. Closely related fields, I would say.
Okay, we talked about cybersecurity and psychology now, and let's talk about the overlapping areas between these two. Can you talk us briefly about where do these fields overlap?
Yes, both fields look into human behavior. You might have heard the saying in cybersecurity, the humans are the weakest link. So it looks into that. And in cybersecurity, you use insights from psychology on cognitive biases, decision-making processes, and so on. So when you leverage these psychological insights, you have more robust cybersecurity systems and infrastructures, really.
Do you think someone who has a background in psychology, how hard would it be for them to switch to cybersecurity? What would be the major skill gaps? If they want to, let's say, start from scratch, what would be your recommendation for them?
Okay, I can draw upon my experience in this one. So let me reflect on the time I first got into cybersecurity. I started working in cybersecurity at this company, and what I was mostly doing was working towards their cross-functional, cultural adaptation in the UK, their establishment, and finally their growth. So that's what I was doing. And then I got into combining both these fields. So that's how I got in. So you can get into cybersecurity like anyone who wants to get a sales or marketing job. So because that's how it was made possible for me.
From my understanding, we are talking about soft skills here, obviously, because obviously psychology is social science itself. But what about technical skills? Have you ever felt that technical skills become a barrier for you, or you felt like need to obtain new skills just to keep up, or do you think it is totally separate?
Yes, at some point I felt like I was falling behind compared to my colleagues. But the thing was, I didn't have to be like my colleagues. And my colleagues were mostly software engineers, and I was a psychologist. So we looked at different parts of cybersecurity, and our jobs were completely different. But obviously, technical skills really help. And so I did go and learn more technical skills about threat intelligence and introduction to cybersecurity in the very beginning, and data analysis as well were some of the technical skills I adopted.
I agree with you, because upon my career as well, I have also seen people who come from total different backgrounds, and then they bring very unique perspectives. I have seen people who come from military background because they have that discipline, team working skills, because cybersecurity is like a war, and then you have to act like as if you are in a war. You are constantly fighting with adversaries. And psychology also, like an interesting perspective here. Do you, for example, you are studying psychology and cyber perspective. Do you, for example, know any scenarios where, for example, governments or threat actors involved psychology specialists to draw attack scenarios?
So I guess we're getting into the human factors in cybersecurity right now. So it's a very, very broad topic. But I guess we can start from fear and reinforcement. And so when there is a phishing attack, usually cyber criminals aim to create either a sense of fear or a reward or a reinforcement. So you know the examples. I'm sure you have seen it thousands of times. You either threatened by a scenario, whereas your data could be leaked. That could be the fear factor. Or the reinforcement would be to make this small investment, and that you would, in return, you would gain a much bigger reward in return after you made that investment. So that's the fear and reinforcement example. And there would be cognitive biases. One big example is confirmation biases. You believe you know more than you already do, but you actually don't, which leads to overconfidence when making decisions and reacting to cybersecurity threats. And in here, there are several ways cybersecurity professionals make decisions, from rational to irrational, spontaneous, dependent, or avoidant. Let's say with avoidant, you try not to make a decision, which is an ideal, but you avoid it. And when it's dependent, you ask someone on how to make that decision. And with spontaneous, you just want to make a decision really quickly, whether that's right or not, which can cause harm in the long term. And with the rational decision making, obviously it's the ideal one, and you look into all the data you have and you draw upon a rational and logical conclusion on that.
Okay. I think we also previously talked about how cybersecurity field is a stressful field, because we are constantly on the risk of attack, and then possibility of that is like discomfort it causes is quite huge because of the penalties that brings us, and then reputational harm to the company. What do you think, like how cybersecurity professionals need to keep their mental health in a reasonable level given that, given those risks? Like what would be the typical things from psychology perspective that they need to do to make sure that they are in a strong, they are in a stronger sense to be able to protect themselves to do those type of attacks?
That's directly related to decision making as well, like to poor decision making, let's say. Stress and burnout is directly related to that. So there should be intervals where people just get away, especially in cybersecurity. This is very important to not to burn out and cool down for a while. So after that interval, decision should be made, which will lead to a more rational and logical decision.
Do you have anything to add in relation to trainings?
Trainings. I'm trained in CBT, which stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. So I think that added up.
I mean, what kind of trainings do cybersecurity specialists receive, or this type of stuff from the psychology perspective? I know like generic ones, but in general, like basically to be able to better prepared for this type of social engineering attacks. We can talk about those trainings.
Social engineering attacks, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, what are the general ones that you were thinking of?
So typically what happens is like before attack happens, the attacker researches about the profile, people's profile. Let's say I'm a CISO, and they first gather information about my profile, and then using that sensitive information, they send targeted email. Either it could be fear, or it could be like reward mechanism, but typically it is fear that we have got your information. If you don't do this by this time, we will leak it to the internet, or we will make it known, and then that creates some sort of fear. Then they have to do something because they are afraid of that. What we typically see in ransomware attack, they enter to the system, they steal the data, and then they encrypt the data so you cannot get your data back. And let's say in a regulated industry, in healthcare or in a financial industry, it's quite serious, because if you lose your customer information, if you lose health data information, then you are obligated to pay fines, and then you are obligated to inform authorities on time, and then the time frame to make a decision here is very small. So what they do is like they reach out to you straight after the attack, and they say that if you give us 1 million or X million, then we will help you to get your data back, but if you don't, then we will sell your data. I have seen some examples in the industry, because of the risk or because of the sensitivity of data, some companies even purchased their data back. So they paid to the ransom, even if it is usually advised against by the government, because there is a risk that they don't give your data back. But I have also seen in my experiences that when you pay the money they demand, they give your keys back, so you can get your data back. But usually it comes at the cost of a quite significant amount. I think here, from psychology perspective, what's important, how to negotiate. So usually with the companies I have worked with, like they hire special agents who negotiate on their behalf. Let's say they demand like £10 million to get the data. They discuss, and then they try to reduce it down. Obviously, you have to know what has been in the past, what would be their lowest value. So you have to use some psychological traits to negotiate with the ransom and then reduce that number. That would be my perspective, basically, from negotiation and psychology. I think it is a good time to move to the ethics part. So with the rise of the AI, now we are seeing a growing number of cyber attacks, but also a growing number of chatbots which people use. And in some cases, we have seen it is giving like some bad results rather than good results. People can get incorrect information, or they can be manipulated. How do we draw a line here? What is the right balance between getting use of the AI and then also being protected from AI?
Well, it depends on the context. I think, like, let's say in business and in organizations, it should be narrated that AI should not be feared, but it will be on the employee side, and it will increase their productivity, and they will derive insights based on their data, and they will help you, let's say, work less and do more. So that could be an approach. At the moment, I'm an advisor to a company that's in AI, and the company's aim is to enhance productivity by their AI systems analyzing the employees' data and then giving back some insights to the employer and to the employee. So I'm working on that to find a solution to decrease fear.
That's interesting. And then another thing I would like to add was, I think recently there was an incident where a teenager get used to speaking to AI in a way that he was speaking hours and hours with AI. And then eventually this person obviously did not realize the dangers of the AI. Eventually they became so close that he started to get manipulated to the point where he committed a suicide. I think it was a character.ai bot, and then now the parents of that teenager is suing the company because that company did not use or produce the AI in a responsible fashion. As a result, that one person has died. So I think now the lines get very blurry as we improve with the technology. Although there are some safeguards and guardrails in place, which basically stops you from getting that kind of level where it could cause harm, but it is also bringing risks in a level it's hard to judge. How do we draw the line? So how do you see the future of this? Like, should the AI be regulated from psychology perspective in a way that it protects humans from this type of risks?
I think I've heard of that event, and it is really unfortunate. I wonder what the type of AI was there. But there are also better examples where AI is highly regulated and it performs in a set of ethical rules. Let's say with ChatGPT, when you type in something that's potentially harmful, he doesn't really answer and says that violates their terms and conditions. So
but there are some jailbreak methods. Like usually when you ask the question a different way, you can usually get away with it. I think the regulation is becoming more and more common in European Union area, but it also comes down at the cost of lagging behind, because I've seen less startups coming from Europe because of that regulation. So myself, I'm also confused, like what is the right balance here? Because EU is lagging behind, but other companies are getting forward. But then it also comes with some of the risks that we mentioned.
And that's an issue, but I suppose AI is constantly learning. So it's a matter of time, I think. It will get smarter to not be compromised like that. And it will learn on those jailbreak tactics as well. What do you think?
I'm a little bit skeptical about this, because when it is like a private company, it is hard to expect ethics from a private company, because then comes with a profit. So I think the regulation is important, but how it should be implemented, to what extent it should be implemented, that's a question that I don't have any answers. I think most people is confused at the moment. Okay, we talked about the state of the cybersecurity from psychology perspective right now, and then what would be your opinion on where this field is going to go in next 5-10 years?
We see that digital environments are getting more and more complex and advanced. So that's why cyber psychology will play a larger role in this. When it comes to psychological resilience and behavior modification, that's where cyber psychology will be the most important. And there will be a new field as AI and virtual reality also get more advanced in terms of cyber psychology. Like, I have a supervisor at the university that looks into how humans interact with AI and virtual reality, and what are its benefits and the risks. That could be one example.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that, so it reminded me like some interesting story. So I think there was a study which was conducted to test what would be the limits of the AI. So they put a question to the AI in a way that it has to have like external support. For example, they put some psychological test which can only be answered by humans, and then they put that test to see how AI would react. And in a very interesting way, AI went into the Fiverr and then hired a human to solve that problem. And when human asked, "Are you robot?" and then AI lied, saying that yes, I am human, just to get away from this. And then using the result from the human, AI was able to get away and then complete the task. So I think this is prime examples of how AI is evolving right now, and then AI is now hiring humans to do its own job to to basically do. So again, this brings very interesting or questionable conclusions, like how it's gonna help to humanity in the long term. That's the reason why we are seeing more regulatory scrutiny lately on the AI. Another thing I want to talk to you about or get your perspective is that when we look at the recent cybersecurity attacks or very high profile cybersecurity attacks, what we are seeing is that those attackers are not high profile individuals who have like, let's say, 10 years of experience with like nice shiny certifications. No. What we see is they are usually teenagers who are 15-year-old, 19-year-old guys who don't even have those kind of I would say experience, but they are somehow very skilled and they're very motivated to do that. What do you think? What would be like a major motivation for someone to ruin their career or life with like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I think in terms of psychological aspects, the motivation there is for one to prove themselves among other teenagers. That's one aspect. But there are also the issues of dark triads, such as antisocial behavior is one aspect, and having low empathy is another example of that. So when someone, a teenager, has those qualities, they have more tendency to engage in cybercrime, really.
Another reason why I'm asking this question is because sometimes our audience is asking us like which certifications we need to pursue, like how do we get into the cybersecurity. But when we look at the data, it doesn't look as complicated, not as complicated, but as straightforward as some people claim. So these teenagers learn cybersecurity or how hacking works by doing self-study, by working on labs. The end message is that everyone who wants to learn cybersecurity have to do in a safe environment using labs rather than focusing predominantly on certifications. This is an area where you can get into like from your bedroom, like you can open your computer and then get a few labs and then learn as you go. So that's one of the advantages of this field. Thanks, Sevgi, for coming. It has been an interesting discussion. I think time is up, so we would like to thanks everyone for watching. And if you have any other suggestions which you would like us to cover from Cyber Perspective, let us down in the comments, and see you in the next podcast. Bye.